Hello and welcome to another video, everybody. Today is going to be a review of Dragon Quest II Luminaries of the Legendary line. For the sake of the review, I recently played through Dragon Quest II on a few different versions of the game, and in this review I am going to be giving my thoughts on the game and comparing different versions of the game. Now, Dragon Quest II has had many different versions, but the original game released on the NES only a few months after Dragon Quest I released. Believe it or not, development of Dragon Quest II began a month before Dragon Quest I released in Japan. In an interview with Famitsu magazine back around the release of Dragon Quest II in 1987, a lot of the game's development was talked about and the development process of the game was revealed, and there was an interview with Dragon Quest creator and developer Yuji Horii. In the interview, it was revealed that with Dragon Quest II, the game's developers wanted to expand upon Dragon Quest I. They viewed Dragon Quest I as an RPG to help introduce people new to the RPG genre, but they felt Dragon Quest I was flawed because of the game only limiting you to being able to use one character being the hero throughout the entire game. With Dragon Quest II, the developers wanted to make it so that the player would have a group of playable characters that could battle together because they believed that 1v1 combat in RPGs was too limited. In the Famitsu article where Yuji Horii, the developer of the Dragon Quest series, was interviewed, he said about Dragon Quest II and the development of the game, "Needless to say, Dragon Quest was an introductory RPG game for the NES for people who had no experience with RPGs. Using this game as a foothold, all the staff had the intention of letting many people know the appeal of RPGs and then going through the next stage to challenge more advanced RPGs." Yuji Horii continues on in the Famitsu interview talking about DQ2's development, saying, "If so, Dragon Quest II is the next stage, must still be party play." Yuji then goes on to say, "This is because one-on-one battles are easy to understand and are ideal for beginners, but on the other hand, they are destined to become monotonous. When the battle is monotonous, the task of raising the level is only painful. The more multiples there are, the more variety of battles there are, and the more various strategies are needed. Some players may find this troublesome. However, for those who are fascinated by RPGs, that troublesomeness should lead to fun. Party play adoption has been decided." Unfortunately, during the development of Dragon Quest II, the developers ran into a lot of trouble with developing the game. Yuji Horii went on to reveal in the interview that the game was delayed at the last minute. It was originally supposed to release in 1986, but was delayed to January 1987 because the game was deemed to be too difficult for the average player, so they needed to rebalance it. Yuji then goes on to talk about the balancing in the game. "This is the reason for the extension of the month. In other words, at this point, the game wasn't balanced yet, and the only way to get the balance is to actually play. Change the data level, play again, and make further changes. Specifically, from this time on, a considerable number of people, including not only the staff, but also part-time game monitors, will actually play." Yuji Horii went into more detail about the game balancing. During the month the game's development was delayed to balance the game, many staff members play-tested the game. They would test the game and Yuji Horii would listen to staff feedback and make changes. Every time a new version was made of the game with new balance changes, they would label the time and date that version was made. Then the developers would playtest the new version and make adjustments where they felt changes were needed. Yuji Horii talks more in the interview about the balancing process. He says, "As soon as it is completed, the changed data will be faxed to Chunsoft. When new data arrives from me, Nakamura and his colleagues at Chunsoft will replace the data and create a new prototype version and distribute it to everyone again. Of course, balancing does not end once. This kind of thing is repeated many times. Initially, it was a 4 to 5 day cycle, but eventually it became a 2 to 3 day cycle and then a 1 day cycle. At this point, the date and time will be written in the prototype version. It's like December 8th, 4 a.m. version. If you don't know which one is the newest modified version. So when I played it, I changed the order of learning spells, changed the strength of monsters, lowered the price of the church, and so on. And 1 month passed in the blink of an eye. It is no longer the time limit. It's not 100%, but I think 90% or more is closer to the ideal balance. If we take more time, we can get closer to 100%, but we can't keep the kids waiting any longer. The final version will be completed in mid-December. At the same time, I felt like I had a stomach ache and I was sick. No, it was hard. Eventually, Dragon Quest II will be released on January 26, 1987 in Japan on the NES. Meanwhile, in America, though, the game was not localized until October 30th, 1990. Dragon Quest II is set 100 years after Dragon Quest I. The story begins with an attack upon Moonbrook Castle by the wizard Hargon, who seeks to summon the demon Malroth to destroy the world. A wounded soldier escapes the battle and flees to the kingdom of Maidenhall, where he informs the king of the attack before he dies. The king then commands his son, who is a descendant of Erdrick, the legendary hero, to defeat Hargon. And from there, the game begins and your journey to save the world from the evil Lord Hargon and his monsters begins. At the start of the game, you begin the game alone solo as the Prince of Maidenhall. Later in the game, though, you get two other characters who join you. The first is the Prince of Kanak, who is the second character who joins you. And then the third character you get who joins you is the Princess of Moonbrook. Dragon Quest II, in terms of gameplay, is very much like Dragon Quest I. Battles are randomly encountered on the world map or in dungeons. Battles take place in a first-person point of view, and an immediate change you'll notice from Dragon Quest I is that in Dragon Quest II, you now can fight more than one enemy during battle, and you can fight multiple enemies during battles. In between towns and dungeons in the game, you'll travel across the world map of the game to reach new towns and new dungeons in Dragon Quest II. Dungeons are where you'll do most of the exploring in the game, and as you travel through the dungeon, you'll randomly encounter enemies who you'll battle. Meanwhile, towns are where you go to rest up, heal your characters, and buy new weapons and armor to make your characters a lot more powerful by spending gold that you get from winning battles. Fighting a lot of battles in Dragon Quest II is very important. By winning battles, players are able to gain experience points and money. Getting EXP from winning battles is incredibly important because it allows players to level up their characters once they gain enough EXP. Once a character gains enough EXP, the amount that they need to level up, they will then level. Once the character levels up, their stats will increase and they will become stronger. In addition, characters will also learn spells as they level up at certain levels, allowing them to cast new spells in battles and outside of battle as well. Dragon Quest II brings many improvements over the first Dragon Quest game, aside from just getting multiple characters to fight with and more enemies to fight against in battles. The world of the game is also massively expanded, and later in the game you get a ship and can sail around the world. And compared to Dragon Quest I, where you could only walk around the entire world of the game, being able to sail across the world of the game is a massive big improvement. Saving your game file in Dragon Quest II is also a huge improvement over Dragon Quest I. In Dragon Quest I, you could only save at the beginning castle of the game you started at. In Dragon Quest II, you still save by talking to a king at a castle, but now there's multiple castles you can go to throughout the world of the game. This is a massive improvement over Dragon Quest I because it means you now have multiple places you can save your file at. The first half of Dragon Quest II starts off mostly straightforward. You'll go along in the game and recruit your other two characters, the Prince of Kanak and the Princess of Moonbrook. Shortly after getting your full group of characters, you'll get a ship and the game opens up. Once you get the ship, you can travel almost anywhere in the world of the game, and the game has a great amount of freedom and exploration. The second half of the game begins once you get the ship and has you traveling to different locations across the world of the game. The game world of Dragon Quest II is massive and is like double the size of Dragon Quest I. There's so many more locations to explore, and the exploration in the game is really well done. A huge improvement in Dragon Quest II is how the dungeons are designed in the game. In Dragon Quest II, you no longer have to use torches or spells to light up caves. This makes exploration of dungeons a lot more smooth in the game and helps the player save inventory space for more valuable items by not forcing them to carry torches in their limited inventory into dungeons. Dragon Quest II also introduces a new type of dungeon that would become a staple in the series. These dungeons are the tower type of dungeons where you go up a tower. The tower dungeons are very unique because as you travel around the tower, you can fall off the edge and end up falling down to the bottom of the tower and having to begin the tower over again. Because you can fall off the edge of the tower and fall to the bottom, this requires the player to pay attention and carefully navigate their way around the tower and make sure to not fall off the edge. So despite all these positive improvements in Dragon Quest II from 1, why is this game considered not that good and one of the worst games of the series? Why is it a very controversial game in the series? This is because, along with the positive changes the game brings, the game also brings a lot of flaws as well. First off, one of the big issues with Dragon Quest II is the second character of the game you get, the Prince of Kanak. He's a very weak party member compared to the main hero, and the third character of the group you get being the Princess of Moonbrook. The Prince of Kanak is supposed to be a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none character who can cast spells and also fight with physical attacks and weapons. However, compared to the main hero, he is far weaker in terms of physical attacks. Meanwhile, in terms of spells, the Princess of Moonbrook, the princess has far stronger spells than the prince does, even only after just joining the party at level 1 and getting her a few level ups and learning her first attack spell. She literally outdamages the prince, who's a higher level at that point in the game, when she gets her first attack spell. The Prince of Kanak also cannot equip as many weapons or armor as the main character, the Prince of Maidenhall, in the game. He is overall just incredibly mediocre. Another issue with Dragon Quest II is the massive backtracking you have to do later in the game. There's a ton of backtracking because in Dragon Quest II, the zoom spell, or as it's called in some versions, the return spell, only warps you back to the last castle you saved at. Unlike later Dragon Quest games with a lot of rogue map exploration, such as Dragon Quest III, where you can use zoom to return to any town you've been to, you cannot do that in Dragon Quest II. Because of this, you now constantly have to get in the ship and sail back and forth all the way across the world from one town to the other, from one dungeon to a town, all over the place. And you're constantly having to sail, constantly having to backtrack, constantly getting into random battles along the way. And after a while, it really starts to wear you down and it gets very repetitive. Another huge issue with Dragon Quest II is the insane amount of level grinding players have to do, especially towards the end of the game. As mentioned in the beginning of the review, one of the big reasons that Dragon Quest II was delayed in Japan was because of the game having difficulty problems and them needing to rebalance the game and take that extra month to rebalance the game difficulty. The game had difficulty problems and they had to delay the original NES version in Japan by a month to further balance the game. The game's balance problems really start to show towards the end of the game. Towards the end of Dragon Quest II, the difficulty becomes absolutely insane. Enemies start hitting you for like more than half of your character's max health. They also start doing instant death attacks that hit your entire party. The game difficulty at the end of the game is why you have to grind so many level ups for your characters, and it really slows down the game and makes you have to do a ton of level grinding. In terms of all the leveling you need to do, we're talking hours and hours of leveling up towards the end of the game. It really is just a big problem with the game, and the balancing in the second half of the game towards the very end is a major issue with Dragon Quest II as a game. Fortunately, there is one thing that helps out players a lot. The remake versions of Dragon Quest II, the enemies when you defeat them, they give a lot more EXP and gold, making the level grinding you have to do a lot more bearable in the remake versions of the game. Speaking of the version differences again, let's get into that topic. Let's talk about the differences between the different versions of Dragon Quest II. Dragon Quest II originally released on the regular Nintendo and then was remade for the Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, mobile phones, and then the Nintendo Switch. These versions have major differences between each other, and we're going to cover many of the changes between the different remakes and versions of Dragon Quest II. It's not just graphics and music changes in the remakes, but also major gameplay changes as well. The first major changes happened from the regular Nintendo to the Super Nintendo version. The Super Nintendo remake not only improves the graphics from 8-bit to 16-bit and also redoes the music, but also makes it so enemies give more EXP and gold for defeating them. This makes leveling happen a lot quicker than in the regular Nintendo version. Dragon Quest II Super Nintendo also rebalances the second character of the game, the Prince of Kanak. He can now equip more weapons and armor than he could in the regular Nintendo version, making him better in battle. This definitely helps out a ton in the Super Nintendo version and makes him more viable, even though he still struggles a lot in that version of the game. In the Super Nintendo version of Dragon Quest II, you can also find stat-enhancing seeds that when you use them, permanently increase a character's stats. Another major change and improvement for the graphics in the Dragon Quest II Super Nintendo version is that the battles now have actual backgrounds instead of like the original NES version, where when you get into a battle, it's just a blank black screen as the battle background. Perhaps the biggest improvement to the battles themselves are now how characters will no longer miss an enemy who's killed by another character if they target and attack the same enemy as another character who kills that enemy. In the NES version of Dragon Quest II, if you had two characters target the same enemy and one character killed that enemy with an attack, the other character who targeted that enemy would completely miss their attack instead of automatically retargeting the next alive enemy. This made battles take a lot longer and made battles a lot harder, and in the remake, that no longer happens and that character will retarget a different enemy if that enemy they're targeting is killed. This makes the gameplay a lot better in the Super Nintendo remake and all the other remake versions of the game. This is a massive improvement for the battles. Now, you might be wondering, what is the big difference between the Super Nintendo and Game Boy Color versions of Dragon Quest II? The changes in the Game Boy Color version are the same gameplay changes made in the Super Nintendo version. However, the game is handheld on the Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color is pretty much just the same as the Super Nintendo, but with 8-bit graphics and different music, and that's pretty much it for the Game Boy Color version. However, between the Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, and then the Switch and mobile remakes, the mobile and Switch remakes change a lot of things for the game in terms of the gameplay. The biggest gameplay changes in the mobile and the Switch version are that the zoom spell now allows you to warp back to any town in the game, and that the Prince of Kanak was buffed and he was made a lot stronger, which are major gameplay improvements for those remakes of the game. Not only are those changes in the Switch and mobile version of the game, but enemies also give even more experience and gold than they do in the Super Nintendo and Game Boy Color remakes, which already had improved EXP and gold from the monsters you defeated in battle. The Switch version is really good, as a matter of fact. The gameplay changes they made fixes a lot of the gameplay flaws in the previous versions of Dragon Quest II, and I think overall with the gameplay changes the Switch version brings, I think that the Switch version is now overall, because of those gameplay changes, the best version of Dragon Quest II out right now. In terms of the gameplay, if we're speaking strictly the gameplay, we don't care about the graphics, the music and all that, this is by far the best version. It makes you have to do a lot less level grinding because of you getting more EXP and gold from battles. It also allows you to use zoom to get to any town, which cuts down on the backtracking. And it's just overall such an improvement in gameplay, and it makes the Prince of Kanak even better, and that's overall just a really good thing. The Prince of Kanak in the Switch version, so in previous versions of the game, the first spell he learned was Fireball. It hit one enemy. In the Switch version, he got buffed. His first spell he learns is the spell Sizz, and that hits an entire group of enemies, and it's really good for the beginning of the game. He gets a lot better at the beginning of the game, and he's just overall a little bit better throughout the entire game. Now, the Prince of Kanak still isn't perfect. You know, he still has some balance problems in the Switch version, but overall, the Switch version is definitely the way to go. It's the one I personally recommend, and the Switch version improved Dragon Quest II so much that to me, it improved my overall opinion of Dragon Quest II. I think a lot higher of the game now because of the many gameplay flaws that were fixed in the Switch version. The last thing to really cover in the review is going to be the music for Dragon Quest II, and the music in Dragon Quest II is pretty good. The world map themes are really good. In particular, I like the first world map theme of the game before you get the entire group of characters together. When you just have the hero by himself, that theme is really good in the game. The battle theme is pretty good, and then the dungeon themes are really good too. The tower theme and the cave theme. The town themes and everything else in the game are pretty good as well. The soundtrack overall is really well done. Overall, Dragon Quest II is an okay game. It's a very flawed game, and it's definitely not a game I would recommend to somebody who's new to the Dragon Quest series. I would really only recommend it for people who are really big Dragon Quest fans and they're looking to play all the games of the series. The Switch remake of it fixes a lot of the flaws in previous versions of the game, and is the version I overall recommend the most for the gameplay changes. However, the game still has a lot of gameplay flaws, and the reality of Dragon Quest II is that Dragon Quest I has the charm of its simplicity, and then Dragon Quest III completely improves upon II, and really almost every other game of the series does everything Dragon Quest II does as well, if not better. As a matter of fact, most of them do it way better in my opinion. So overall, Dragon Quest II is an okay game. It's definitely worth playing. The game will take about 15 to 25 hours to finish. It's overall not a super long game. It's a game you'll finish relatively quick. But overall, Dragon Quest II, it can be a fun playthrough. It is a okay game, but it's not going to be anything that's like amazing. There's many better RPGs out there, many better Dragon Quest games. I mostly just recommend this for people who are really big Dragon Quest fans and they want to play the other games of the series. There's a lot of old school RPG stuff you have to have a lot of patience for in it. There's not much of a story, and really the gameplay is the main thing to play it for, and it's not like an amazing RPG. It's just an okay game. I've enjoyed it, but it's very flawed. And overall, Dragon Quest II I do think is a little bit underrated, but it deserves a lot of the criticism it gets. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the review. I really appreciate it. And make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and also follow me over on Twitch, where I do full game playthroughs of single player games, and then I review them here on the YouTube channel over at twitch.tv/Shockstorm. I'd really be glad to have new people there on the stream. We're always welcoming of new people. So stop on by the stream, give me a follow, introduce yourself. We're always happy to have new fans of games there and new people to chat and hang out with. Thank you all so much, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. Thank you everybody, and you have a great day.